My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 31 years old, and I'm speaking to you from an apartment in Arlington, Virginia, the same apartment where my entire life fell apart and was rebuilt. If you are listening to this, I request you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon for more videos like this in the future. So let me start at the beginning. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning in January. I remember exactly what I was doing. I was sitting at my desk at MedFlow, looking at our metrics dashboard, which was showing some concerning trends in patient intake. The email notification popped up at 10:47 a.m., and the subject line was generic and automated. Your account has been accessed by a new device. Do you recognize this activity? I barely registered it at first. My email gets dozens of these notifications every month. Tech companies send them constantly now, trying to be security conscious. I flagged it, made a mental note, and moved on. I had a meeting with the finance director in 5 minutes, and I needed to prepare my notes on why our Q4 patient acquisition costs were creeping up faster than our projections. I didn't open the email again until that evening. By that time, I'd gone through an entire day of work, dealt with 3 crisis meetings about patient data integrity, answered roughly 70 emails, and attempted to have lunch at my desk while simultaneously revising our supply chain documentation. When I finally did open the email, I noticed 2 things. The device location was listed as Arlington, Virginia, United States, which was where I lived, so that seemed fine. And the device type was mobile browser Chrome. I used Chrome on my phone constantly, so that also seemed fine. I closed the email and went about my evening. I was supposed to meet Ethan for dinner at this new place in Old Town Alexandria that he'd been wanting to try. He'd made a big deal about the reservation, which was typical of him. He was the kind of person who turned ordinary evenings into events through sheer force of enthusiasm. That's what I loved about him, I thought at the time. He made ordinary things feel important. I should have known that was the problem. By Wednesday, a second email arrived. This one was from Equifax, one of the 3 major credit reporting bureaus. The subject line was more urgent: important alert about your credit report. Someone had made a hard inquiry on my credit, specifically an inquiry for auto financing. I had not applied for an auto loan. I did not own a car. I took the metro to work, and I used Uber when I needed transportation, so the inquiry made no sense. I sat at my desk with my coffee, which had gone cold, and reread the email 3 times. Hard inquiries were different from soft inquiries. Soft inquiries didn't affect your credit score, but hard inquiries did. This one had been made by a company I'd never heard of, Patriot Financial Solutions. I called Ethan. "Hey, babe," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I was just thinking about you. You coming to dinner tonight?" "Ethan, did you apply for an auto loan?" I asked. I kept my tone neutral, but I was already feeling that first cold wave of something, not quite fear, but a tightening in my chest that I didn't like. There was a pause, just a half second, but I caught it. "What? No, of course not. Why would I do that? I have a car." "Someone applied for an auto loan using my social security number. Equifax just sent me an alert." Another pause, longer this time. "That's weird," he said, and now his voice had changed into the tone he used when he was problem-solving. This was a tone I recognized well. It was calm, reassuring, designed to make the person he was talking to feel like he had everything under control. "That's just a mistake," he said. "Those things happen all the time. Credit agencies mess up applications, or sometimes there's fraud on the credit company's end. Did you click through to see who made the inquiry?" "It says Patriot Financial Solutions," I told him. "Yeah, I don't even know what that is," he said. "Probably some sketchy lender. You should definitely call Equifax and dispute it. That's what you're supposed to do with fraudulent inquiries. They usually clear it up in like a week." He was right, logically. That's what you were supposed to do, and yet something in me wanted him to know who this lender was, or to have some kind of explanation, but his voice was so reasonable, so confident, that I started doubting my own instinct. "Yeah," I said finally. "Yeah, I'll call them." "Good. I love that you take this stuff seriously. Most people would just ignore it, but you're smart about this kind of thing. That's one of the things I love about you." He said it so naturally, so smoothly, that it felt true in the moment. I called Equifax. The representative, a woman named Patricia with a tired voice, confirmed that the inquiry had been made, but couldn't tell me much more than that. She suggested I file a fraud claim if I was concerned about it. How bad is this? I asked her. How much does a hard inquiry hurt my score? A few points, usually, she said, but if there's actual fraudulent activity, you'll want to get ahead of it. The sooner you report it, the sooner we can investigate. I filed the claim. I documented everything in a spreadsheet, because that's what I do, I organize information, and I tried not to think about how strange it was that I had to file fraud claims before I even knew if there was fraud. By Thursday, I called my attorney. I should explain, I had an attorney because I'd been through a contentious lease dispute 2 years back with a landlord who tried to keep my security deposit. I'd called Maya Patel, who specialized in civil disputes and fraud cases, and she'd handled it efficiently enough that I'd kept her number in my phone. I didn't expect to need her again. But on Thursday morning, when a third email arrived, this time from Experine, another credit bureau, I knew I needed legal advice. The email contained a credit report with multiple new accounts I didn't recognize, a store credit card I'd never applied for, an unsecured line of credit, and something that made my heart actually skip, a limited power of attorney, notarized in Falls Church, Virginia, dated December 2nd of the previous year. I had not been to Falls Church, I had not signed a power of attorney, I had no idea what this was. That's when I called Maya. Her office was in a second-floor space in Old Town Alexandria, overlooking King Street, where tourists and locals mixed on the sidewalks below. I'd taken the morning off work. I'd told my boss I had a doctor's appointment, which was technically fraudulent, but I was discovering that the world was full of a lot of fraud, and my little lie seemed insignificant by comparison. Maya was 48 years old, sharp-eyed, with short gray hair that she wore with the confidence of someone who didn't worry about what people thought. "Okay," she said, settling into her chair as I sat across from her, my laptop open, my phone in my hand, my credit reports printed out and organized chronologically. "Okay, tell me everything. Start from the beginning, and don't apologize or minimize anything. I need the facts." So I did. I told her about Ethan, about how we'd met 14 months ago at a networking event, about how he worked in sales consulting, though whenever I tried to get specifics about what that meant, the conversation seemed to drift into vague discussions about B2B solutions and enterprise clients. I told her about the joint account we'd opened 5 months ago, the one Ethan suggested as a way to simplify household expenses and rent payments. "How much money is in that account?" Maya asked. $47,000, I said. "That's my savings from 5 years of overtime and careful budgeting, and some contributions Ethan has made, though honestly, I'm not even sure how much is mine versus his at this point." Maya made a note. Then she pulled her laptop around and said, "Pull your full credit report, all 3 bureaus. I need to see exactly what's been opened in your name." I did it right there from my phone while sitting in her office. The reports appeared within minutes. What I saw made me feel like someone was squeezing my chest. My credit score had dropped 47 points. There were inquiries I didn't recognize for auto financing, home equity lines of credit, personal loans, and then there was the power of attorney. "A limited power of attorney," Maya said, reading the details on my screen, "is a legal document that gives someone the ability to conduct specific financial transactions on someone else's behalf. If this one was notarized, it's considered legitimate, unless you can prove it's fraudulent." "I never signed anything," I said. My voice sounded strange to me, far away. "Show me your email," she said. "Everything from Ethan from the last 6 months. Also, show me any documents he asked you to sign, anything that required your login information or your approval, any links he sent you." I scrolled through my email, I found it almost immediately, and message from Ethan from exactly 6 weeks ago, sent at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. The subject line read, "Final beneficiary update, just needs your initials." He'd included a QuickSign link, a service that lets you quickly approve or sign digital documents. I remembered this email. I'd been sitting in a Starbucks waiting for a work meeting to start. I'd opened it on my phone and, without really reading the full document, had clicked through and initialed at the bottom. Pull up that QuickSign link, Maya said. See if you can access the cached version of what you actually signed. I did, and what I found made me cold. The document wasn't a beneficiary update. It was a personal loan guarantee, a $40,000 personal loan guarantee to be taken out in Ethan's name. And by signing it, I was legally responsible for that debt. If he defaulted on the loan, the lender would come after me, not him.
He's layering this, Maya said, her fingers moving quickly across her keyboard as she took notes. The POA was covered for the account transfers. The loan guarantee makes you liable for debt you didn't incur. If he defaults, or more likely when he defaults, the bank comes after you. If anyone questions the account transfers, he can claim it was under the authority of the POA, which he thinks is valid because it was notarized. What do I do? I asked. First, Maya said, we file a fraud complaint with the FTC. That's the Federal Trade Commission. You'll get an incident number that you'll use as reference for everything else. Then you pull all 3 credit reports again and place a fraud alert. And then you change every single password, email, banking, everything from a device he's never touched. She looked at me seriously. And then we wait, she said. Wait for what? I asked. For him to panic, she said. Because right now, he thinks he's still in control. But when he realizes you know what he's done, he's going to escalate. And when he escalates, he's going to make a mistake. That evening, I came home to find Ethan waiting for me. He was sitting on the couch in our apartment, the one we'd painted a soft gray together, the one that had seemed like such a commitment when we'd moved in 6 months ago. He was holding my favorite tea, chamomile with honey, and he smiled when I walked in, that smile that had made me feel special for 14 months. Now it made me feel sick. I heard you had a rough day, he said. Your boss texted me. She was worried about you when you said you had to leave early. My boss did not text Ethan. I was 99% certain of that. This was part of his technique, the gentle misstatement of facts, the kind that made you second-guess your own memory. I need to ask you about some charges on the joint account, I said. I sat on the opposite end of the couch, taking the tea from him but not drinking it. My voice was steady. I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head a dozen times since leaving Maya's office. There's a transfer to Crossway Consulting Group, $12,000. Ethan's expression shifted. It was so subtle that if I wasn't watching carefully for it, I might have missed it. For just a moment, something flickered across his face, something that looked like calculation. Then it was gone, replaced with concern. "Oh, babe," he said, and he moved closer to me on the couch. "Yeah, I was meaning to tell you about that. Cash flow thing with the business. Operating costs hit harder than expected this quarter. I was going to cover it. That's why I didn't flag it separately. I didn't want you to worry." He reached over and took my hand. His palm was warm and dry, and the gesture was so familiar, so tender, that for just a second I felt myself wanting to believe him. "You're not upset with me, are you?" His voice had changed, become softer, become the voice that had first made me fall for him. Now it made me feel sick. "I know we said we'd discuss major purchases together, but this is maintenance stuff, right? Just keeping the business running. I didn't think it would be a problem." I pulled my hand back, gently. "There was also a credit inquiry," I said. "Someone made a hard inquiry for auto financing, using my social security number." Now Ethan leaned back. He rubbed his face, and I watched him do it, wondering if this gesture was real or if this was also performance. Everything felt like performance now. "God, babe, I think I know what happened. I had Marcus, you know Marcus from the firm, look into a business vehicle loan for company purposes, like a van for transporting supplies to client meetings. I think he might have used the wrong social. I can call him right now and straighten it out. But I promise you that's all it was." There's also a limited power of attorney, I said. My voice had steadied even more now. I was slipping into the same state I entered when I was analyzing spreadsheets, the part of me that turned away from emotion and toward data. Okay, he said finally, his back to me. Okay, this is sloppy on my part. I'm going to call my accountant right now and get this straightened out. He picked up his phone and started to dial. I watched him, really watched him, and what I saw was a man running through a mental checklist. He was considering responses, evaluating what he'd say, preparing a narrative. He spoke for 15 minutes, his voice taking on the brisk efficiency of someone in business mode. Yeah, hey Derek, it's Ethan. Listen, we've got an administrative issue with the Crossway setup. Yeah, Claire just found some stuff in her credit report. Yeah, I was going to handle it quietly. I know, that was stupid. Can you just walk me through what the POA actually authorized? He listened to the other end of the phone, nodded occasionally, said uh-huh and yeah, I see, in a way that sounded like genuine understanding. When he hung up, he turned back to me and took my hands. Okay, so here's what happened. The accountant set up the Crossway LLC structure with some legal documentation, and he had his attorney send paperwork to your email. There was a miscommunication. Derek's attorney thought I'd already discussed the POA with you, but I hadn't. That's my fault. I should have been more transparent about the business stuff. He pulled me closer. We were sitting on the couch again, and his voice had become the warm, reasonable voice of a man who was explaining something simple to someone who had misunderstood. What happened was an administrative error, which we're fixing. The POA was supposed to be for business purposes only, just to allow the accountant to access business records and move money around within the business structure. It wasn't meant to be about your personal finances. That was just a miscommunication. But the transfer came from our joint account, which is connected to the business account for ease of cash flow. I know it looks bad when it's written out like that, but these things are incredibly common when you're scaling a business. They're administrative mistakes that happen all the time and they're fixable. We just need to file an amendment with the notary and the whole thing goes away. He kissed my forehead. The gesture was so tender, so familiar, that for just a second I felt myself wanting to believe him. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I should just trust him. Later, after he'd stepped onto the balcony for another phone call, a long one, his voice too low to hear, I sat on the couch and opened the banking app on my phone. I scrolled through the transaction history, moving methodically through months of data, doing what I always did when I was unsure. I organized information. The transfers to Crossway had started 4 months ago. They'd begun small, $800, $1,200, but had grown progressively larger, $8,000, $5,000, $3,000. The $12,000 I'd asked him about was just the largest one so far. But there was something else, a pattern I might have missed if I wasn't trained to see patterns. Every month there were regular transfers to a second savings account that I didn't recognize. The label read Administrative Services. The amounts were smaller but consistent, $500 to $800 each month. Over 4 months, that added up to merely $3,000 that I had no record of discussing or approving. I screenshotted everything. I opened my email and sent all of the screenshots to my work email, a place Ethan didn't have access to. And then I did something I didn't want to do. I called Maya. "It's Claire," I said when she answered. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, and she answered like she'd been waiting for my call. "I found something else. There's a pattern in the account transfers. It started 4 months ago and it's been systematic, and there's another account, a savings account, that I don't even remember opening." "Send me everything," Maya said. "And Claire, don't say anything to him about this. Don't show him that you found it. Just act normal. He's going to think he's still in control, and that's good for us right now." Friday morning, before Ethan woke up, I called the notary's office in Falls Church. "I need to verify if a limited power of attorney with my name on it was notarized on December 2nd. I kept my voice professional, operations manager professional, the tone I used when I was calling vendors or coordinating logistics. The woman on the phone, she sounded like she was in her 60s, tired, took my information. Then she said, "Yes, there is a limited power of attorney on file with your name as the principal. It was notarized on December 2nd. Let me pull the details." She came back after a moment. The remote notarization took place at 3:15 p.m. Virginia time. The client who coordinated it is listed as Ethan Cross. Is there a problem? My stomach tightened. Remote notarization meant I wasn't there in person. It meant I hadn't presented my identification face-to-face to verify I was actually me. It meant someone else did that verification on my behalf. "Can I ask who the person was who presented identification for me?" I asked. "I'm not able to discuss the specifics of other parties' involvement in a notarization, but if you have concerns about the validity of a notarized document with your name on it, I'd recommend contacting the Virginia State Bar. You can also file a complaint with our office regarding the notary's conduct." I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Maya and told her about the remote notarization. I could hear her typing as I talked. "That's leverage. Virginia has specific standards for remote notarizations. The notary is supposed to verify identity using multiple methods: seeing the ID, matching the person to the ID, checking against government databases. If that didn't happen, the notarization is invalid, and if the notarization is invalid, anything that document was used for can be challenged." What do I do?
That afternoon, I was sitting at my desk at work when my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Can we talk tonight? There's something I need to tell you." My first instinct was fear. Had he found out that I'd contacted the notary? Had someone told him what I was doing? But then I realized he was going to tell me something. He was going to further construct the narrative. He was going to create another layer of explanation that would make the fraud seem less fraudulent, the lies seem less like lies. I texted back, "Sure, let's talk tonight." That evening, he was gentle, he was affectionate. He made dinner, pasta with fresh basil, the kind of dinner he made when he wanted to create an atmosphere of normalcy and love. We ate by candlelight, and he told me about the business situation. "I've been thinking about everything," he said, "and I realize I've been really irresponsible with how I've handled the finances. I've been stressing about keeping the business afloat, and instead of being transparent with you about it, I just moved money around and tried to make it seem like everything was fine." "Why would you do that?" I asked. "Because I didn't want you to think I was a failure," he said simply. "You're so competent, so good with money and organization, and I felt like I had to appear like I had everything under control. So instead of talking to you about what was really happening with Crossway, I just moved money and hoped nobody would notice." It was a masterful explanation. It acknowledged wrongdoing without admitting to fraud. It positioned him as someone who was struggling, not someone who was deliberately stealing. It positioned me as the strong one, which made me not want to abandon him. "The POA thing," he continued, "that was just Derek's attorney being careless. I'm getting that sorted out with the notary. But I want you to know that I'm committed to being more transparent going forward. I don't want to keep secrets from you." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you," he said, "and I'm sorry I've been dishonest about the business stuff. I'm going to fix it, I promise." The problem was that part of me believed him, part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me thought that maybe I had overreacted, that maybe this was just a man who was struggling with his business and had made some financial mistakes. But I had trained myself to be systematic, so after dinner, after Ethan had stepped onto the balcony for another phone call, I did what I always did. I documented everything. I opened a new note in my phone and wrote, "Friday, January 16th, evening. Ethan admits to moving money without telling me, blames business stress and not wanting to appear like a failure. Claims Derek's situation was attorney's mistake, says he's fixing it with the notary." And then I added, "Note, this is a prepared explanation. He knew I would find out about the transfers. This is the narrative he's prepared." Because that's what I was starting to understand. None of this was spontaneous. All of it was planned.
Over the next few days, I watched Ethan very carefully, and what I saw was a man who had created a performance and was now making small adjustments to it as needed. He was extremely kind to me, too kind. He brought me coffee in the mornings, made dinner most nights, suggested we go to the farmer's market in Old Town. He held my hand while we walked, and he talked about the future as if it was still solid. A trip to Cancun in May, moving to a bigger place eventually, potentially getting a dog. But he was also doing other things that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. He started opening my physical mail before I got to it. "I'm just helping organize the household stuff," he'd say when I asked why he was intercepting my mail. He'd set aside official-looking envelopes and hand them to me with, "Just your benefits renewal," or "Just your insurance stuff." He changed his password to the joint account without telling me. When I asked why, he said it was security stuff related to fixing the business situation. "Derek recommended it," he said. "Until we get the fraud sorted out, we should have separate passwords." He took phone calls on the balcony, and when I asked who he was talking to, he'd say, "Work stuff," and change the subject. But his voice through the glass sounded different, tense, sometimes angry. He asked me to hand him official mail that came addressed to me. "I'll just make sure it gets filed properly," he'd say, and I would hand it over, but I'd also photograph it first with my phone, which he didn't know. He suggested multiple times that I take some time off work and not stress about the business stuff. He said I needed to relax more and not be so focused on details. He said my job was taking too much out of me and that maybe I should reassess my priorities. What he was doing was laying groundwork. He was positioning me as someone who was stressed, who wasn't thinking clearly, who needed to be taken care of. In legal terms, he was building the foundation for a claim about my mental stability, and I was documenting all of it. I started a file on my work laptop, a file that Ethan would never see because he didn't have the password to my work email. In that file, I created a timeline. Every suspicious transfer, every intercepted piece of mail, every phone call, every suggestion that I was overthinking things or being too focused on details. Maya had told me something that stuck with me. Paper trails beat charm every time. On Tuesday evening, something shifted. We'd been talking about the POA situation again. I'd asked Ethan if he'd contacted the notary's office about the amendment he'd mentioned. He said he had, but that it would take a few weeks to process. "I don't understand why we need an amendment," I said carefully. "If I didn't actually sign the original document, then it should be invalidated, not amended." "That's more complicated," he said, and now his voice had changed. It was no longer warm. It was the tone you used when you were explaining something to someone who wasn't quite understanding, someone who was being difficult, someone who needed to be managed. "The notary's office needs to document why the original notarization is invalid," he said slowly, enunciating carefully. "If we just say it's invalid without going through the amendment process, it creates a legal gap. The amendment clarifies what was supposed to happen versus what actually happened." "But what was supposed to happen?" I asked. "I never authorized you to get a POA in my name." "You don't need to authorize it if you're my partner," he said. "Spouses share financial power of attorney all the time." "We're not married," I said. "We might as well be," he said, and now his voice was becoming harder. "We have a joint account. We live together. We share household finances. In practical terms, we're financially married." I stood up from the couch. "I don't think that's actually how the law works," I said. "It doesn't matter what you think the law says," and now his voice had become cold now, stripped of all the charm that usually cushioned it. "What matters is what the law actually says, which you clearly don't understand, and what matters is that you stop asking questions about stuff you don't understand and just let me handle it." I moved toward the kitchen, toward the hallway, thinking I would just leave the conversation, go into the bedroom, call Maya, and he stood up and stepped in front of me. "Don't," he said. One word, quiet, final. That's when I understood that this was no longer a situation I could navigate through patience or conversation. That's when I understood that I was dealing with someone who was dangerous in a way that went beyond financial fraud. I picked up my phone from the kitchen counter. "I'm calling 911, I said. "You don't want to do that," he said. He was still standing between me and the hallway. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? A woman's voice said. "I'm at 2417 Arlington Boulevard, apartment 4C. My boyfriend is preventing me from leaving the apartment. I need police officers to come." Ethan's expression went through a series of changes: shock, fury, calculation. Then he stepped aside. "I wasn't preventing you from doing anything," he said loudly, as if the 911 dispatcher could hear him. "She's having some kind of breakdown. This is insane." I walked past him and went into the hallway. I sat on the floor outside my apartment door. The 911 dispatcher stayed on the line with me, asking me questions, making sure I was safe. "Is anyone else in the apartment with you?" she asked. "My boyfriend is still inside, but he's not being aggressive right now. He's there." "Officers are en route. They'll be there in about 8 minutes. Just stay on the line with me." I waited. I sat on the floor of my apartment building in Arlington, Virginia, and I watched through the open doorway as Ethan sat on the couch, his face perfectly calm, his entire performance ready to shift into the next version. The police arrived at 12:23 p.m. 2 officers, 1 female and 1 male, they took statements from both of us separately. I went into the hallway with Officer Morrison, the female officer. I told her about the fraud, about the blocked exit, about the threatening tone his voice had taken. "Has he been physically violent?" she asked. "No," I said, "but he prevented me from leaving the apartment." "How?" she asked. "He stood in front of me," I said, "and he said, 'Don't.'" She made notes. Then she asked, "Do you feel unsafe staying in this apartment tonight?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. Officer Morrison went inside and spoke with Ethan, who was now in full charm mode. He explained that there had been a misunderstanding about some business finances, that he and I had different interpretations about the extent of his business authority, that he certainly hadn't prevented her from leaving, that he'd just been having a conversation. The officers created an incident report. The number was APD 2025019847. Officer Morrison gave me a card with that number on it and told me that if Ethan tried to contact me or came to my apartment, I should call back with that number. "What should I do tonight?" I asked. "You can stay here if you feel safe," she said, "or you can ask him to leave, or you can stay with a friend. It's your choice." I made the choice to ask him to leave. "You should go stay with a friend," I told Ethan. "I need space. We both do." He packed a bag. He said he'd stay with Marcus for a few days. He tried to hug me goodbye, and I stepped back. "Just go," I said. When he left, I locked the door behind him. Then I sat on the floor of my apartment and called a locksmith. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, and I created a new document. I titled it Everything, and I started writing down every piece of information I had: dates, times, transaction amounts, screenshots, emails, the notary office information, the police incident number. By 4 a.m., I had filled 12 pages. By 6 a.m., I had called the bank's fraud line and reported my accounts as compromised. By 7 a.m., I had filed a formal fraud claim with the FTC. The representative, a tired-sounding man named James, gave me the incident number, FTC #328947556. By 8 a.m., I had changed every password I owned, from a laptop that Ethan had never touched, my work laptop. By 9 a.m., I had called my company's HR department and told them I needed to take a personal day. And then I called Maya. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. I told her about the blocked exit, the 911 call, the incident number. I told her about what he'd said. "You don't need to authorize it if you're my partner." "He was testing you," Maya said. "He was pushing to see how far he could control you." When you pushed back, he revealed himself. That's actually good for us, legally." "What do I do now?" I asked. "Now we file a protective order petition," Maya said. "We lay out every piece of evidence, the fraudulent POA, the loan guarantee, the account transfers, the blocked exit, the incident report, everything organized chronologically, everything labeled, everything making a clear case." Ethan filed a counter-petition for a protective order alleging that I was engaging in harassment and identity theft against him, that I was making false accusations to ruin his business reputation, that I was experiencing a mental health crisis and had fabricated the fraud claims. A locksmith arrived at 10 a.m. He changed my locks for $250. I gave him cash that I'd withdrawn from a bank account Ethan didn't know about, a savings account I'd opened 3 years ago, before I'd met him, that had slowly accumulated money that I'd hidden away as insurance against uncertainty. I was learning that my instinct to organize and document everything was my superpower. Wednesday morning, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message, when I listened to it, made me stop breathing. "Hi, this is Margaret Cross," a woman's voice said. She had a careful, controlled tone, the kind of voice that comes from someone who has rehearsed what they're about to say. "I'm calling about Ethan. He's my wife. I think we need to talk." I replayed the message 3 times before calling Maya. "He has a wife," Maya said, and she said it like it was the final puzzle piece. "Let me run some searches. Marriage records in Virginia are public. If they're legally married, it'll show up in Fairfax County records." I waited, and I scrolled through my phone while I waited. I looked at all the photographs of me and Ethan, 14 months of memories that were now taking on a different quality. In every photo, he was doing something perfect, holding me close, smiling at the camera, looking like a man in love. How long had he been married when he met me? Weeks? Days? "They're married," Maya called me back. "As of March 2024, Ethan Cross and Margaret Whittemore Cross. They have a townhouse in Falls Church. It's registered in both their names. The mortgage is in their joint names." The townhouse. The one he'd joked about wanting to invest in someday. The one he'd never taken me to see, but I'd driven past it once when he mentioned the address and I was curious. A nice place, 2 stories, a driveway, the kind of place where a married couple lives. "How is that possible?" I asked, though I knew the answer even as I asked it. "He was running a double life," Maya said. "He has a primary family in Falls Church and a secondary income stream. That's you. The joint account, the refinancing attempts, the loan guarantee under your name, it wasn't random fraud. It was systematic. He was using your identity and your credit to cover financial gaps in his real life." I thought about Margaret on the end of that phone line. I thought about her discovering what I had discovered. I thought about another woman realizing that the person they loved was a lie. "I'm going to call her back," I said. Margaret's voice on the phone was sharp and measured. She was 42 years old, an HR director for a construction firm, and she had discovered Ethan's double life approximately 6 hours before I had called her back. "I found a credit inquiry for a refinance on an apartment lease, in both our names but on a property I'd never heard of. That's when I pulled his credit report and started seeing transactions I couldn't explain." "He got a job where?" I asked. "Nowhere," Margaret said. "That's the thing. I thought he was going to work every day, but apparently he was going to see you. He's been maintaining 2 complete households, my townhouse in Falls Church, where I live, and your apartment in Arlington, where he's been staying with you." "How did you know to call me?" I asked. "I went through his email. I found correspondences with someone at your company. I pieced together that you work at a healthcare startup. I found your LinkedIn, I found your phone number in his backup files, and I realized that he'd been showing you the exact same thing he was showing me. Attention, affection, promises about the future, just at different times." "I'm so sorry," I said, and I meant it. "Don't apologize," Margaret said. "This is on him, not on you. I'm also going to be filing against him. Fraud, divorce, asset seizure. I'm an HR director. I understand documentation. I've been collecting it methodically since I found out. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm calling my attorney tomorrow, Margaret said. I'm going to file for divorce and fraud, and I want to know if you're willing to cooperate with me, because what he did to me, using my credit for refinancing, opening accounts in my name, it mirrors what he did to you. If we both file, if we both provide documentation, the authorities will see a pattern. Maya filed the protective order petition first, with me providing a binder full of evidence. The binder contained the notarized POA, the loan guarantee, screenshots of the e-signatures, the FTC incident number, the police incident report, the credit inquiries, the bank transfer records, everything organized chronologically, everything labeled, everything making a clear case. Ethan filed a counter-petition for a protective order alleging that I was engaging in harassment and identity theft against him, that I was making false accusations to ruin his business reputation, that I was experiencing a mental health crisis and had fabricated the fraud claims.
He also provided a witness statement from someone named Sienna Blake, who attested to my unstable behavior and my history of aggressive conduct toward Mr. Cross. I knew who Sienna was. Ethan had mentioned her once as a colleague from the firm. Maya pulled the court filing and read it aloud to me over the phone. I have observed Miss Donovan's increasingly paranoid and aggressive behavior toward Mr. Cross over the past 6 months. I have witnessed her making accusations without basis and expressing delusional thinking. I am concerned for Mr. Cross's safety. She's coached, Maya said flatly. He told her what to write and she wrote it, but it won't matter. Look, her statement is dated January 16th. I can pull her social media from that date. Let me see where she actually was. Maya pulled Sienna Blake's Instagram. On January 16th, Sienna had posted photos from a yoga retreat in Sedona, Arizona. Photos dated and time-stamped, showing her in yoga poses, in the desert, with a group of women. She couldn't possibly have witnessed anything I'd done on that date because she wasn't in Virginia. The court date was set for February 14th, which seemed darkly fitting. The night before court, I couldn't sleep. I went through my binder one more time. I verified every document. I checked every screenshot. I made sure every date was accurate. Maya had advised me to let the evidence speak for itself, to not be emotional in court, to just present the facts. You have him, she said. You have everything. Just present it clearly and let the judge see who he really is. In the courtroom, I sat at a table with Maya, and Ethan sat at a table across from us with his attorney, a tired-looking man named Stephen Polos, who appeared to already know his case was unwinnable. Ethan presented himself as a victim. He was calm and reasonable. He wore a navy suit that made him look trustworthy. He spoke about his concern for me, his attempt to help me with the business stuff, his worry that I was spiraling. I have no idea where these accusations are coming from. I loved this woman. I was trying to help her understand how business finances work, and instead of being grateful, she's made these allegations that are completely false. Then Maya stood up. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't get emotional. She walked through the evidence methodically like she was presenting spreadsheets to a board of directors. She presented the notarized document that I'd never signed. She presented the e-sign link proving I'd been tricked. She presented the credit inquiries. She presented the bank records showing systematic transfers to an LLC. She presented the FTC incident number. She presented the police incident report. And then she presented the marriage records. Your Honor, Maya said, the defendant is married to Margaret Whittemore Cross. They own a townhouse in Falls Church. They have been married since March 2024. Meanwhile, he has been in a relationship with my client since November 2023. He has been maintaining 2 complete households while systematically defrauding the credit and bank accounts of both women. She placed the marriage documents in front of the judge. She then presented Sienna Blake's witness statement and pulled up her Instagram. She showed the judge the photos from Sedona. She showed the timestamps.
The witness in the defendant's filing was not present in Virginia on the date she claims to have witnessed Miss Donovan's aggressive behavior. She was in Arizona. The defendant provided a false witness statement. The judge, a woman in her 60s with the expression of someone who had seen too many men try exactly this gambit, looked at Ethan over her glasses. "Do you have a response?" she asked him. I was confused about the timing. His voice was still calm, but I could hear the strain underneath it now. I probably just asked Sienna about an earlier incident. I didn't intentionally mislead the court. "Didn't you?" the judge asked. It wasn't really a question. She denied Ethan's petition for a protective order. She issued a protective order in my favor that required him to surrender any access to my financial accounts and to cease contact. Furthermore, the judge said, looking directly at Ethan, "I'm ordering that all documents related to this case, including the fraudulent limited power of attorney and the e-signature records, be preserved and provided to federal law enforcement for investigation. This court is also referring this case for potential criminal charges." After the court ordered evidence preservation, things moved very quickly. The bank's fraud investigation team contacted Maya. They had begun their own review of the account access logs and had discovered something that made my skin crawl. Multiple login sessions from IP addresses that didn't match my home network or my work network. Every single unauthorized access had come from a different IP address. Ethan's phone, his work computer, his car if he had a mobile hotspot. They also found audit logs showing that the account permissions had been changed 9 times. Each time the change was made by a user account that matched Ethan's login credentials, even though I'd never given him my passwords. He'd apparently memorized them or stolen them from my laptop when I wasn't looking. "We're referring this to our fraud unit for potential criminal charges," the bank's compliance officer told Maya. "The notarized POA is problematic because the notary didn't verify identity according to Virginia standards, and the loan guarantee was taken out under misrepresentation. Both are felonies." The notary office launched their own investigation. They discovered that the remote notarization for my POA had been conducted with an identification document that matched my name, but not my actual face. Specifically, the notary had been shown an ID that said Claire Donovan, but the photograph did not match me. "We have clear protocols," the notary's supervisor told investigators. "We verify multiple ways: government ID, checking government databases, verifying the person in front of us matches the ID. Clearly, that didn't happen in this case. This was either negligence or intentional fraud." That investigation was going to take months, but the outcome was already clear. Meanwhile, Ethan was collapsing. He'd been fired from his job. His employer had learned about the fraud allegations and the married while dating situation and decided the liability wasn't worth it. His bank account had been frozen pending the fraud investigation. Margaret's attorney had filed for divorce and had seized most of their joint assets, leaving Ethan with limited access to liquid funds. He started calling me constantly. I didn't answer, but the messages piled up. They were predictable in their progression. First, angry messages. "You've ruined me. You've destroyed my life. How could you do this to me?" Then, manipulative messages. "I still love you. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. We can work through this if you just drop the charges." Then, desperate messages. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, just give me another chance. I promise everything will be different. I'll make everything right." And then came something different. He tried to open a new line of credit using my Social Security number at a different bank in Falls Church. The bank flagged it immediately. It was another attempt at identity theft, another attempt at fraud, another felony. By March, the U.S. Attorney's Office had opened a formal investigation. The Virginia State Police had forwarded their findings to the FBI. Ethan's attorney, Stephen Polos, the same tired-looking man from court, began negotiating a plea deal. The charges would include wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and misappropriation, 4 counts total. The potential prison time ranged from a few years to 15 years, depending on the plea and the sentencing guidelines. Ethan's initial protest was that he didn't understand what the problem was, and that all of this was just misunderstandings about business finances. But once the notary log entry was verified as falsified, once the IP addresses were matched to his devices, once the loan guarantee document was examined by a document examiner who concluded it had been digitally manipulated, his attorney's advice became clear: take the deal. I don't know if Ethan would have gone to trial if he thought he could win. I don't know if his confidence would have remained, but I do know that by the time the plea deal was on the table, every piece of evidence was irrefutable. On the morning of the plea hearing in federal court in Alexandria, I sat next to Maya. I was wearing the same navy suit I'd worn to the protective order hearing. I felt calm. I felt like I was presenting quarterly metrics to a board of directors. Just facts, just data, just the truth that I had carefully organized. Ethan entered in a suit that was no longer well maintained. His jawline had softened. He looked like a man who had been running a con for so long that he'd started to believe it, and then suddenly discovered that nobody believed him anymore. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of identity theft, and 1 count of forgery. The judge accepted the plea. Sentencing was set for May. The restitution amount calculated as $87,000, the total of all transfers, fraudulent loans, and credited fraud losses. $40,000 from the loan guarantee, $27,000 from the account transfers, $20,000 from the fraud investigation costs and attorney fees. Ethan had to pay restitution to both me and Margaret, according to the judge's order. He had to pay the bank for their fraud investigation costs. He had to pay the federal government for the prosecution. After everything, he would likely spend 5 to 7 years in federal prison. By the time he was released, he would be 40 years old, with a felony record that would follow him forever. 3 weeks after the plea hearing, I received a call from Margaret. She had driven to Arlington to meet me for coffee at the same Starbucks where I'd clicked through the fraudulent loan guarantee without reading it. "The divorce is finalized," she said, sitting across from me with a cup of black coffee. "The judge awarded me the Falls Church house and the retirement accounts. Ethan got the car and the debt. The credit card companies have already started coming after him." "How are you doing?" I asked her. "Angry, but clear. I know exactly what happened and why, and that's better than not knowing. I'm changing my Social Security